Excellent.
from home.
Thank you so much for your time. It's so good to connect.
When you're a busy chap.
That's true. I'm happy to connect.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Bit of context, maybe, likely so. Christian, about 4 years ago, I started to wake up, courtesy of the love of my dog, who's under the desk, and found my way to various things, Roberta Grimes, and eventually to Bat Gap, and of course via Rick Archer and 700 plus interviews, I think, all sorts of other connections. One of which was Brian. Brian's been interviewed on Bat Gap as well. When was that, Brian? About 2019, I think.
It was August 2019, so a little over 5 years ago.
Yeah. And
time flies when you're having fun.
When you know there's no time.
Yeah,
that's interesting. So I've obviously over the last 2 years, with Brian's significant help and encouragement and love, progressed on my path of discovery. That path included, of course, seeing you and reading your book, which was absolutely fabulous, and recommended to my two brothers who, unknown to me at a very similar time, late 2019, early 2020, also found themselves waking up, just completely unconnected. And we found out over time. And yeah, I mean, Brian and I chat for about 2 hours every week on a Saturday. We've not run out of anything to share. And as we've shared with you, part of that process has been connecting with other brothers and sisters all around the world. Australia, of course, we've mentioned Rob Schwartz, and South Africa. I think we've had Switzerland, Israel, all sorts.
Canada,
France.
Yeah.
It's good. So we're delighted to connect with you, and I think there's no real context other than sort of meeting and greeting and sharing and finding out where we're up to. Brian, is that where your head's at?
Well, my understanding. Sorry.
Or heart.
Yes.
Or heart.
My understanding is that when another term for soul is energy force field. So, Christian, you are an energy force field, functioning through or manifesting as a body. And so when 2 or 3 gather together, as Jesus is renowned for having said in the scriptures, there he will be in the midst with us. So it's not the body that's connecting, it's the energy force field. So you're sending out your energy, I'm receiving your energy, resonating with it, responding to it, and the vice versa. So we're exchanging energies. Now that functions in time and place through words, language. And when it's focused, when our words and language are focused on reality, the love, the light, spiritual truth, then that reality expands limitlessly. And so even though the 3 of us appear to be engaged in this private conversation, it's going out to all the universe. And we have a friend here with us. I don't know if you can see this, Christian.
Yes, the portrait or this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure I don't need to tell you who that is.
I assume it's Jesus.
Yes. And he's looking down over the Kidron Valley at the old city of Jerusalem, where he lamented. This was just before his arrest. So he's here because he is an energy force field, and he's connected to us all. The whole of the sonship of God, he's connected to because he's awake. And we're moving into that process a step at a time. So he joins with us for several reasons. The first is because he loves us totally. There is no being that he does not love with Christ love, God, self love. So when we're talking about God, the creator, self, Christ, the reality of eternity. Of course, he knows, and he's in there like Flynn. Try keeping him away. So he will be adding his, and is adding his love, his inspiration, his affirmations, and that may appear as something that emanates from your mouth without you even knowing that you were about to say that, and as perhaps happens with you from time to time or frequently, and as happens with me, and I'm sure also with Mark. So he's there in the midst with us, sharing his love. And when we're on the wavelength of love, that's going to increase, because love keeps having to express itself and extend itself. It's a pretty good plan. Since we know the source of that plan, it could
Yes.
hardly be other, could it?
Talking of extending, Christian, I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing, obviously given back when you first remembered your between life's experience, pre-incarnation experience, obviously wrote the book, etc. And in the past years, how's your journey evolved? Has it continued to evolve? Are you finding your groove in the monkey suit a bit better over time?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we're all continuing to evolve. And when we're willing to, the door opens and evolution is facilitated even faster. Yeah,
So,
I've definitely had an evolution of experience in my own case, yeah.
Good. And of course, as we know, that includes wife, family, job, etc.
Yes.
All this stuff.
mortgage.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's something certainly I've had a very tough time with over the last couple of years, is getting past that, what Brian calls a self-assessment opportunity, a self-created self-assessment opportunity, a real, Rob Schwartz said, if you're now feeling that you're really being boxed in by your soul, it's because it's supposed to be happening. But hell's bells, it hasn't been easy.
But we're here to support each other with love and blessing and understanding and compassion and caring, all the nice positive energies.
Absolutely. Christian, possibly, sorry, I'm jumping in with all sorts of random thoughts. No. The other one that intrigued me, and this is relevant to something Brian can share, I guess, in a moment, about a previous life experience and memory. In addition to your between lives, have you had any sort of previous life recollections, as in incarnated recollections, or is it only that what you've written?
Yeah, some. They're pretty limited, but yes, some are more detailed than others. Sometimes when I get interested, I want to go into that, and I just feel like, no, it's okay. I'm here to be Christian.
Yeah, I'm here to be me.
Yeah.
But are any of those former embodiments in some way playing some sort of formative role or expanding role in your present presence as Christian?
Sure, it's one being, it's one me. So there's not actually it's one being that's evolving.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there is, of course, interrelationship between the parts of the self. It feels like, I mean, from the human perspective, it may seem like some other person, but it's not. It's actually you.
Yes.
So, like, as an example, the life that comes to mind is I was once a human female, and I had given birth, and I was in pain. And then I got pregnant a second time.
Yeah.
And I remember being terrified of having to give birth again because of the pain of the first labor. And so that fear that I experienced in between those two births is the same fear that I'm here to process in this life.
Right.
Which is the perception of not being able to escape pain.
Especially if you're a female.
Especially if you're a female is pregnant and the pain is coming. It's interesting though, because I remember certain limited, but a certain perceptions that I had in that life that are so alien to me now. For instance, this is very simple, but I remember feeling and knowing the role of the female I don't know when, like, I mean, I have no intellectual idea of what civilization or timeline, but I remember knowing that my role was to basically be there for the man.
Wow.
Which is so different than, what I would think now as Christian, but at the time it seemed like that was just the norm. I make myself available to the man. That's very strange to me, both as a man and as with my current cultural understanding. That seems ludicrous.
That could be any time before the 50s.
Yeah, maybe. No, this was. I don't know when it was exactly, but it was very. The surroundings were very simple. Right.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. Because I certainly personally haven't at this stage, but Brian, you've got a fabulous story to tell, and as Christian has rightly said, it's the one you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But connected. So go ahead, Brian, if you don't mind sharing that.
Absolutely.
The story of Paul. Yeah.
This event arose in our consciousness. That's Teresa, my wife, and me, as a result of a very major family bust-up, which came in the form of a horrific psychic attack. Verbal, but it was psychic energy, dark, negative, attacking energy. And we had no idea where this came from. So we started saying, where did this come from? So we started getting answers in the form of flash awarenesses of events that had happened in the 1600s, in which I was a farmer called Paul, and Teresa, my wife now, was then my wife, Esther. But I had an older sister who was very much espoused to the Puritan church, which was all about guilt, retribution, sin, no joy, etc. I'm sure you know more or less what I'm talking about there. And her name was Clara, and Teresa's name was Esther. And Clara hated Esther because she wasn't having anything to do with the Puritan church. Communing with our Creator was running barefoot through the fields and through the woodland and enjoying the sunshine and associating the beauty of creation with the Creator. And so that I'd been raised in the Puritan church from birth and seeking after God. Where else are you going to find God other than in the church when you've come with a blank slate? Well, in his early 20s, Paul had an epiphany in which he suddenly became aware that the church was a sham. It was lies, and that this isn't what God and his creation are all about at all. And that made Paul very angry that he'd been duped through his formative years. And he started speaking out volubly against the church, calling it out for the sham that it is, with its lies about sacrifice as the path to salvation, etc. And of course, that was a very dangerous thing to do 400 years ago. You could get yourself into all sorts of difficulty. So then I had an actual mystical awareness of an event that took place then, 400 years ago, in which I saw as if I was sitting in the auditorium of a theatre, and this was being played out on the stage. And Paul was sitting at his desk, writing by candlelight with his quill pen, and Clara knocks on the door and comes in and says, "Oh, hello, Paul. I've brought your erstwhile friends from the church, hoping we can mend some fences and build some bridges." And all the while, she's moving into the room, and about half a dozen of Paul's erstwhile friends from church, with whom he'd undergone a separation because they were stuck in the church and he'd quit. They were all gathering around him, and they suddenly grabbed him, tied his arms and legs to the chair, and they crushed his tongue with an animal castrator. Now, I was observing this, but I was also experiencing it because of the connectedness between the Paul embodiment and the Brian embodiment. So I experienced everything, the suspicion, the anxiety, and then the terror of what was about to happen and what was happening. Blessedly, I was saved from the actual pain of having your tongue crushed, but I experienced everything else. Now, that really established a much more conscious connection with Paul, which I have been blessedly adding to and communing with. And then when Paul got towards the end of his incarnation, he said to Jesus, "When I have finished here, I would love to have a meeting with you to see if there is a way in which I can help my fellows to understand who you really are." Now, when we put in a request that is sincere to Jesus, then it is always answered, because he answers this, not this. And so about 30 years ago, he explained to me that such a plan had been agreed between him and me, which he then affirmed about 15 years ago. But around the end of the 20th century, I knew that I had to write a book, because if I came to the breathing my last and hadn't made an attempt to share some of the amazing experiences I've been blessed with, I'd be left with regret. So I wrote a book, and that was published in 2012.
Can I interrupt for a second? I just have a question. So the realization that you needed to take this action, was that experienced during Paul's experience, or because it's both one, you knew at the soul level you were going to do it in this lifetime?
Well, I only had consciousness at that time of the consciousness of Brian.
Okay.
But what I found interesting was, as I was observing this scene unfolding on the stage in front of me, Paul was writing. And although I have never seen myself as an author or writer, I wrote this first book, and that was published in 2012. Well, then within a couple of years, three different people from different parts of the planet said to me within 3 weeks of each other, "When are we going to see another book from you? Because we know there is another book within you." Well, if one person said it, I'd have just said, yeah, and moved along. But when three different people who didn't know each other said the same thing within 3 weeks, I said to myself, if I am not paying attention to my inner promptings, how am I going to know what I might be missing? So I wrote and the first book was entitled Seek Ye First the Kingdom. And that more or less was in a way a bit of an autobiography, but setting out the mystical and spiritual experiences, which entailed a lot of rescue work. And that was again engendered by my own compassion for a world of pain and suffering, which just welled up in me until I could hardly bear it. So the second book was then entitled Finding the Kingdom Within. And 2 days after that was published on Easter Day 2016, I was suddenly given the titles of 5 more books that I was to write. And they were being dictated to me from Spirit. And I had to scrabble for a piece of scrap paper and a pencil to write them down on, these 5 titles. And I'm very glad to say they're all now published.
They're just behind your shoulder.
Congratulations.
Yes. So they go from seek, they're a progressive process. Seek ye first the kingdom, finding the kingdom within, entering the kingdom within. That's this. If you can see that.
Yep.
And then living from the kingdom within. Then book 5, sharing the kingdom within. Book 6, extending the kingdom within. And book 7, being the kingdom within. So there are a progressive series of steps from what King David would have described as the valley of the shadow of death in Psalm 23, which is where we are appearing in this embodied state, to the summit of the hill of the Lord, step by step. So I've had lots of inspirational understanding of this. And while I was writing, the inspiration was palpable. So this was a collaborative venture between me and various others, including our elder brother here, and others with whom I'd had connections in former embodiments. One in the 1500s of 2 people, 2 very important people in my formative years here. One being my older brother, whose name was Philip Sidney in the 1500s. And I was his younger brother, Robert. And we had a younger sister, Olga.
Brian,
Go on.
Now, I was just going to say, on the subject of channeled works and clearly inspired works, I just wanted to touch base with Christian on, are you familiar with A Course in Miracles, A Course of Love, Choose Only Love, all the various, I mean, Jesus has been very busy from New York to the UK to, where's Sebastian Glatz? Argentina, etc.
Hungary.
Yeah, and Marie Perron, she's in the States, I think.
Yes.
Long story short on this one is that I've studied to some extent, or more or less, all of those works, including reading Brian's works, and they are all coherent. Mm-hmm. It's all the same message, it's all the same content, it's the same heart space. There's the Glenda Jackson book, not Glenda Jackson, Glenda Green book as well. And that's certainly something that I've found so encouraging and heartening.
Absolutely. Yeah, that coherency is something that I really wanted to capture, if possible, with the help of Spirit. Like Brian said, I definitely felt that it was a collaborative effort. In fact, I don't even feel like it's my book, the book that I wrote. I feel like I'm just a gatekeeper for it.
First receiver.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be driving down the street. I'd be driving down the street and I would get this chunk and I'd be like, right now. And I'd be like, I'm driving right now. Like, so I'd have to like find a way to record the thing that came. And it took 6 years. It was little pieces. You know, it wasn't like all at once for me. It was like, I mean, I might get 3 chunks in 2 days and then it might be 2 months and all of a sudden, you know, it would just be just as the energy moved and as I was awake to it. Mm. Anyway, so the coherency of the message is something that I'm very passionate about because what I discovered personally was the same as what was described in all of these texts. A Course in Miracles, you know, being one. Course in Miracles is amazing, but it's also something that I feel like that. Just a comment. The text is so spiritually specific.
Yes.
That the language I find can be difficult for people. Because it's trying to use 500 English words over and over to describe something that's extremely nuanced and deep. And so because of that, I feel like it's actually at times poor in communicating.
It's very dense.
Not just because of its density, I just mean like it tries to communicate very specific spiritual ideas using language that's so limited that I feel like often it can be misinterpreted. But anyway, A Course in Miracles is amazing. But all the other, texts I had visited and understood, it's all the same. And when I had my personal experiences, I understood why. And like, it's quite beautifully obvious that love is the central message. And I'm so passionate about sharing that. And coming from a left brain background myself and working, in a left brain context and being a communicator and a structured person, I felt this needs to be put into some kind of simple structure that is nonlinear. And that was what I felt that Spirit helped me to do. In fact, at the end, when I organized the book with it references itself throughout the text. And I kind of meditated and entered a space and laid out all the paper around me. I printed everything out, and it was this huge, took up a whole room. And I was kind of like, asking like, what gets referenced where? And I felt like I was nudged and shown. And then later, when I saw the internal book references as they appeared side by side, there were really important idea connections that I did not make. So it was really neat because I would see that these connections were made and go, oh my gosh, like that. I never considered that, but that's really important. That's really powerful idea connection.
In the movies, there's strings across the piece of paper on the wall.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stand back from
it is like that. It is like that.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful, beautiful.
Well, the plan that seemingly was evolved between Jesus and Paul in the 1600s, of which I had no conscious awareness, was something that has been brought about for application and operation now in this embodiment. And so it was 38 years between the time of starting or first having a manifestation of Jesus in his celestial glory in 1967, before I came to A Course in Miracles in 2005. And by the time I'd got halfway down the first page of A Course in Miracles, I knew that he who was the origin of that writing was the same being that I'd been on a one-on-one journey with since 1967, at least consciously. And in fact, of course, much longer than that. And so, blessedly, by the time I picked up A Course in Miracles, I'd had the benefit of decades of tutelage from Jesus. So I didn't have any trouble with A Course in Miracles, understanding it, because he'd been preparing me for 38 years. So I think Teresa and I, there's maybe 5% of what he was saying in the course that we weren't clear about, but that soon became clarified. So it was obviously part of the plan. Well, I was very impatient as a young man, and I said to Jesus in 1968, why don't you just give me the answers to the top 10 questions, and then we can just really get this show on the road? And he just smiled and he said, actually, it doesn't quite work like that. And he explained. So I've been impatient, but over decades, it's taught me something in the way of patience. And infinite patience is essential, as he explains in ACIM.
In that context, Brian, you are quite close friends with Glenn Hoverman, the publisher of Sebastian Blacksley's work, and he shares bits and bobs with you. And one of the ones he shared, was it late last year, was
thereabouts.
Glenn posed the question back to to Sebastian.
Sebastian.
Correct me if I'm wrong in any of this. Okay, so all of this is fine, but can you ask Jesus when and over what sort of time frame this is all going to come to pass, the ascensioning and the awakening, etc.? And apparently the response
And
was,
what's it going to be like?
yes, we're within the next 10 years, and this was last year, so the clock is ticking. Have you heard anything along those lines, Christian, about the timelines of what's going on?
So it depends on how we define okay, the ego is impatient.
And
we want to see results now, please. We want to see results in this lifetime, please.
Yes.
I mean, I think Brian's story kind of illustrates that there are what the human would consider significant time frames involved, but to spirit are not really that big of a deal. Anyway, the awakening process is happening quite swiftly. I wouldn't put a deadline on it. I don't know of a deadline, but the thing is, some might define the awakening by a certain critical velocity, you could say, you know, when there's a shift in vibration to a certain point, and now we're like over the hump, kind of, as it were.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure we're over the hump. But one of I can paraphrase a little bit of what Jesus said to Sebastian in response to Glenn's question. He said, this isn't going to be a sudden event. It's going to be, and it is already happening, in a series of steps. And he gave some examples, and I can only remember, without referring to the text, 3 or 4 examples of events that have happened, a number of them in my lifetime, certainly. One of which was flower power, hippiedom, in the 1960s, which started in San Francisco. Are you familiar with all that? Flower power and so on. And what that was doing was, in the younger generation, throwing off the chains, the manacles of structured existence where you did what your parents and your school said you were supposed to do. You're supposed to get a well-paying job and raise a family and blah, blah, blah. And so the events that began, at least outwardly began, in 1967. And I was, by amazing synchronicity, I was actually at Haight-Ashbury in August 1967. And I experienced what hippiedom was all about up at close quarters. And so that was a starting to break free of old order consciousness. Another one was the end of the Mayan calendar, winter solstice 2012. Another was the global financial meltdown of 2007-08. And there have been others. And the fact that we're in pretty well globally in political mayhem with what's going on in your country, the events that you may not have heard about here, where politics has gone completely off the chart, and the new government is making decisions that a 5-year-old wouldn't make, knowing that they were completely arse about face. So, and we don't need to talk about politics. So the events that, according to what Jesus said through Sebastian, is in 2032, I think it was, or it may be in 2033, there will be a culmination of these step-by-step events, which will manifest as a massive outpouring of divine love, which will impact upon and transform the lives of not only of all humanity, but of every living thing, with love. And if, by way of an example, if you've got 2 soldiers about to kill each other in a war like what's going on in Ukraine, when this event takes place, they will be completely overcome by divine love. And instead of seeing the man across the way as their enemy, they will realize that he's their brother in Christ. Now, I've experienced that love when Jesus manifested to me in a basement lodging in 1967 in Vancouver, Canada. And it's an orgasm of the soul, but it never ends. It's forever. And it's Spirit told me that this is 1,000 times 1,000 more intense than any such feeble bodily experience. And that is what heaven or eternity actually is like. And I can attest to that because I experienced it. When Jesus was this close to me, looking into his eyes, I was looking into eternity. There was no ego in him, of course, at all. And so I was completely enveloped by his aura. And that love was so powerful that I was a quivering jelly, and waterfall of tears from my eyes, tears of joy, of ecstasy. Absolutely.
So beautiful.
And that was 57 years ago. And it's as fresh in my mind. I can live it. I can see it. I'm experiencing it anytime and share that. And if that's of encouragement for people who are wanting to be on their journey, but feeling that nothing much is happening, stick with it. That's the important thing. Stay focused. Do not allow ourselves to get distracted from our trajectory toward the light by distractions of this world, or money, or women, or beer, or whatever. There's no shortage of distractions. Well, we can still enjoy them without getting distracted from our focus by them. Or if we do momentarily, getting back on it, back on track.
Yeah.
That's something I'd love to share with anyone and everyone who's inquiring.
Absolutely. And Christian, the other thing that you've mentioned in your various chats is your gratitude to Tom Campbell for his work, and equally so on my part. Amazingly, if you're able to connect with it, I guess, uplifting, right, and useful. Brian,
he's a bit clinical, but
yes.
So no, it's not for everybody, but he really helped me. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm afraid I don't know Tom Campbell.
He's a physicist and consciousness explorer. He studied out-of-body experiences with Bob Monroe from a scientific point of view. He wrote a book called My Big Toe, which is a 1,000-page tome.
My big theory of everything.
Yeah. My Big Toe stands for My Big Theory of Everything. He doesn't mean his big theory of everything. He means you as the reader.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's very scientific, and anyway, I mean, his work was impactful for me because 14 years ago, before I went through my awakening, I was overly reliant on intellectual process and understanding. And so his work was what I needed.
Yeah.
You needed a liberation.
Yeah.
I did. I needed a liberation. It took 1,000 pages of that text for me to really hear, go find out, go meditate.
Yeah.
And that was the most important. Go see, be a scientist. So that's something that I share often is be a scientist, go find out, go investigate what you are beneath all thought. Go investigate experientially. Don't make anything up. Just go look.
Absolutely.
For real.
And let it happen from here rather than from here.
And I use the words quality of intention. That's Tom Campbell uses those words. I've inherited those that I kind of borrowed that from Tom, but it's the best way to articulate it. What is the quality of your intention? I mean, what is the real why, the real quality of being with which you're making a choice? Is it love or fear? Because you can't trick your quality of intention.
Yeah.
You can't trick your act. I mean, your ego can trick you can trick yourself as to what your quality of intention is. But the real why you're making any given decision is of a certain quality. It is what it is. And so if you actually go into this genuinely and really investigate, really, really look. And if you find a bunch of crap in the basement, that's okay. What do you do with the crap in the basement? Do you look at it? Like that's just such a big step. So many people have so much crap in the basement, they don't even want to look at it. It's okay. It's okay if you're a big mess. That's like the first step of real strength, is realizing, oh, I'm a fearful, quivering mess, Anyway.
There is a lady called Donna Rebido, who is one of these near-death experience people, has been involved with Tom quite a lot. And in the photos of Donna and Tom, he is smiling when he's got his arm around her shoulder. So there's heart as well as science with Mr. Campbell.
Oh, sure. No, he's got so much goodness.
Yeah.
I just actually returned a few weeks ago from the International Association for Near-Death Studies conference in Phoenix.
Yes.
It was an international conference. 700 people were there from around the world. And they really bring a professionalism, kind of a rigor to this content. But the heart that is there, the quality of presence for 700 people in person, 300 remote, so 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Whose energy, like you said in the beginning, Brian, it's not about physical. There's no physical distance. It's just all within consciousness.
Exactly.
But being present with these people does refine a certain level of physical focus.
Yes.
and it is absolutely amazing. There's so much love. There's so much authenticity. There's so much confidence in love. There's so much just genuineness. You don't hear anything negative for 5 days, not because people are trying to avoid being negative, because they're just
not negative.
Wise. There's no complaint. Yeah, it's just all presence and acceptance and love, no matter anyone's physical condition or age or sex or anything. It's just so it reminds me, oh, we really can do this on Earth.
Yeah.
Like we really can. Like I leave every year, I leave the conference. I mean, I've gone physically twice now. The 2 years before that I participated remotely, but it wasn't the same for me because I didn't put in as much time. But going to DC last year and Phoenix this year, I left feeling such real hope, that we really can do this in the physical. Like we can actualize a loving community and be just joyful and free.
Not only can we, but it is inevitable.
It is inevitable. Absolutely. It is inevitable. I agree with that 100%. Yeah, it's inevitable. Love can't lose. I mean, in the end, there's such wisdom and power behind the truth of love that through all the divine laws at work, it is inevitable that one way or another, whether we make it long and painful or slow and painless, no matter what we choose, we can't help but end up back there. That's just the truth.
It could be said that a measure of the intelligence of Homo slumberus, as I call us, instead of Homo sapiens, is when you're faced with a question of either, would you like your release to be quick, or would you like to stay in pain and suffering and misery and loneliness a bit longer? Exactly. And they say, yes, I'll stick with the loneliness and the misery for a few more circuits of the carousel of birth and death.
No, it's so true. And I've actually used a very similar statement a few times recently in certain interactions. And people say, well, why do we do that? Well, form association is deep when fear is deep. So it's okay. It's just, a simple, very neutral way to put that is it's just yet unevolvedness. That's all. It's just, we haven't learned we've had enough, of the pain and suffering sometimes in some people's cases yet. That's okay. And how many times are you going to subject yourself to pain, and smallness, and before you decide I'm done with that?
Yeah.
That's all. And it's okay if, we're free to choose that. Okay. You want to choose more pain? All right.
Yeah. Keep going. So don't forget, I'm still here with you. Whenever you want to reach out your hand and take mine.
Exactly. I'm still here with you. I love you.
In this context, they often talk about T.S. Eliot's poem, Little Gidding. I know Rick Archer's a big favorite, and this particular line is, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a beautiful way of describing expansion or evolution of consciousness, because we can't, I mean, there's two things, it sounds like a paradox, but beingness can't, it is perfect already. But meanwhile, as we go out and venture into these worlds of manifest form and return, it's like seeing it for the first time. We've added, you know, I like to say that like contrast itself is like carving out a cave of what we're not. A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles is really good at describing this and helping us find our way out of the cave. But anyway, it's like we carve out a space, and then through the integration of that experience and the eventual inevitable ultimate return, it's not like anything can truly be added. But on the other hand, now we have experienced something and we return and see it anew, and that seeing it anew is additive.
Yes.
It's an
I'm really passionate
moment.
It's not, you know, it's like returning. I'm very passionate about this because of my pre-birth experience. I saw the incredible value of the human experience. I'm so passionate about this, that this is not just a big mistake or something. This is a meaningful, intentional process. And when we return, it's like I've used a metaphor, it's like going for a run. Like, why would you ever leave your couch and go for a run? Why would you ever do that? Like, that sounds stupid. Why would you put yourself under stress? Well, because when you get back, well, now you've gone for a run. Now you know. And now the couch is actually comfortable in a way that it may not have been before. Not that you ever really were truly in danger, because we're never, ever truly in danger. Of course, never, ever, ever, ever. But in the meantime, that which you truly are, now you see, you know more, you've experienced more. It's like the being that originally inspired me to incarnate before I'd ever incarnated. It was like I saw and I felt this incredible power and love and freedom and, oh my gosh, the quality of essence that's possible through the integration of this limited of an experience that we're having. And that is an incredible gift. Being given the chance to play a human was like winning the lottery, man. I'm telling you, I know it. I felt it. I was like, oh my God, I felt so honored. Just to have the chance to be a human and play a human life. Oh my God, it was like you couldn't hand a more valuable lottery. It's like,
okay,
anyway,
but let me ask the crucial question.
Please.
You've just made a very interesting, positive statement. Would you choose to do it again? Starting from scratch,
to do a
birth,
physical life again.
Yeah, take another body.
Well, I can't.
After this one,
I can't say from this limited point of view clearly, because I don't have good visibility from here. I'm still veiled and still, experiencing the context. But the thing is, there is value to it. So it's like, it's not fundamental. It's not fundamental value. You could even say, this is hard to talk about. We're really pushing the limits of language within duality here. But there are, it depends. It's complicated. At the soul level, you never have to. You never have to. You
choose to. Yeah.
But you choose to. And then meanwhile, if you have buddies and loved ones that are asleep and they're like poking themselves, cutting themselves through form association and through being stuck in the world of the manifest, you might go back just to help them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
that's a very
love.
good reason to come back.
That's what love does. Love helps. It helps.
Mm-hmm.
So the processing, like in my case, I came to like integrate a specific vibration, fear. And I know that. And I knew that by doing that, I was serving. You see, it wasn't just like, it's not like a task either, but I was helping to heal the whole, the collective of humanity, but also it was also growth in myself. And it was also somehow a service to all that is somehow. Like, I don't know how to describe this, but it was like, if I could do that, then all that is did that. You see? And
it's sharing.
It's sharing it. Yeah, I'm a part of it. It's beautiful. So I do it I did it out of love too. It was like, oh, I'll do that. I'll do that. I can do that. So to your question, would I choose to do that again? Well, would I make a loving choice again? You bet you.
Well,
Absolutely.
putting it like that, I can't raise any argument. The ego in me cannot raise an argument.
No. And I think, Christian, one of the things that sort of blew my synapses was reading the various, listening to the near-death experiences, when you come in your past life review to realize how many opportunities you lost for love, because it's every moment of every day, in every thought, every feeling. And goodness, if you can live consciously with that, sort of reminding yourself, life changes. It's just,
And to your original point, Brian, I'm not like making a definitive either or statement about the value of incarnation. I mean, eventually we reach a point when we just like A Course in Miracles points out, we see that form doesn't have what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So
the parable of the prodigal son actually covers this so well. If you're familiar with it, the parable of the prodigal son.
I am, yeah.
It covers it in just a few sentences, a few paragraphs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You were mentioning about this event at Phoenix recently. Well, Rob Schwartz introduced me to two women about 6 months ago, who's one who lives in Oregon and the other who lives in North Carolina, sorry. And their sons, who were both in their 30s, completely separately, they didn't know each other. They were both murdered by their partner. And, well, I don't know what mother love is like, because a father's love is nowhere near the level of a mother's love. But the agony that those two women experienced, and which they obviously called to themselves, as did their sons and their sons' partners, to act out this charade, was for growing. And these two ladies, I conversed with them on Skype a few months ago, back in the spring, I think it was, and they were absolutely in bits. They couldn't sit still. The one of them in particular couldn't sit still. She was moving about. She had to keep going away from the camera and just trying to keep herself together. And we talked for a couple of hours, I think it probably was. And that helped them to, because they knew very little about Jesus. They had only very cursory understanding of who he is, most of it from what they'd been told at school. And so I helped them to understand that he's here as the messenger, the anointed messenger of the Holy One, and that he is here for us. And if we're willing to reach out and accept his love, he will help us through these dark moments. And they are now flourishing, both of them, even though some ridiculous decisions were made in the court about what should happen to the perpetrator of the killing of one of them in particular from the West Coast. The son was shot 9 times at point blank range by his partner. And this was actually videoed because the son, who had a little boy of 3, he had arrived to collect his little boy for a visit, and he'd left his the camera in his car. What do they call that? A camera.
Dash cam.
A dash cam. Yeah. He'd left his dash cam running when he went up to the door to fetch his little boy, and the partner came to the door and shot him 9 times. And this was all recorded on camera, so there was absolutely irrefutable evidence. And the judge and the court proceedings in Oregon meant that all the childcare and looking after the little boy was now placed in the care of the murderer's family, and the one who was the mother of the man who was shot, she has not had any opportunity to see her grandson. And the state law and the judges, and they even went to Montana, where the little boy is in the care of his maternal grandmother, and the authorities there refused visits for the little boy, who is being groomed to hate his father, his murdered father, by the in-laws, etc. And so there's a saying here that the law is an ass. Well, if ever there was an example of that, and there was the plea of guilty was entered, and so there was no trial, and the court decided that the sentence would be 17 years for culpable homicide, or whatever you want to call it, and she'll be out in what, half or 2/3 that time. Now, from a world view, that was absolutely anathema for the murdered son's mother. But what we have seen is that she's now moved through all the madness and the agony of this, and she's now accepting. And so Jesus talks at length about acceptance in a course of love. And she's now free. She's liberated. She now knows that her son isn't dead, that there's no such thing as death. He's alive, and she's in communication with him. And so this is where rescue work really comes into its own. And it saved these two gals, one from the East Coast, one from the West Coast. How many years do parents of murdered children go through agony and condemnation of the perpetrator of the crime? Now, the reason that that's brought to mind is that they attended this event in Phoenix, in which I believe there were several speakers about near-death experiences and how we can change our view, our experience, our perception of events in this world.
Brian, I think they're separate events.
Oh, are they?
The one that's Christian
Helping Parents Heal. Yeah, right before the IONS conference, there was the Helping Parents Heal conference.
Oh, right.
Same facility.
Same venue, but different events.
Same venue, separated only by a couple days.
Mm-hmm. Some similar participants, like Suzanne Giesman, for instance, would have been at both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. I've slightly digressed there, obviously, but
no, that's fine.
Thank goodness for forgiveness, eh?
Right. Good. How are we doing for time, Christian?
I have about 10 minutes. I have about 10 minutes.
I'm being bombarded over here, so let's go for another 10.
Okay.
Cool.
Sure.
I just wanted to say to Christian, thank you so much for the go and sit in the cupboard with your monsters story.
Sure. It was my father's story, really.
Yeah. Well, you
but it's what we all, yeah.
Huge help to me at a time of very many monsters. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the power moment.
Yeah.
It's interesting that Jesus says on a number of occasions in the scriptures that he had come to overcome the world. Well, the three of us in this conversation and untold others are here to overcome the world. And by the world, we can interpret that as being the ego. And that's what we're here to do. And thank goodness we have an elder brother who has already done it and is here to hold our hand and guide us along the valley of the shadow of death, which is.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
I was just going to say that I was raised in a Lutheran tradition, so the tradition of Jesus has always been very meaningful to me personally. I still go to church. I speak at a Christian Unity church, but I belong to a Presbyterian church because I love the energy and the service there. I don't often speak to the person of Jesus because it can be a pretty contentious topic. But I'll simply say that in my own life, just a personal comment, that I have found it ironic. I know some people close to me, I won't name any names, but that what occurs to me is that because of their devotion to an extremely, what I would consider to be a limited or narrow belief system around Jesus, that ironically they don't even know him, like in the way that they could. They do, of course, know him, and that we are all connected. And Jesus, like you said, is a being who is, I believe, of service to the whole.
Yes.
And so there's always what you could say is there's always a relationship there, of course. But I just mean personally, when it comes to intellectual understanding or permitting the fullness of love, there's an incredible amount of limitation that many traditions and many individuals have put on what Jesus represents and what he means. So I find that to be sad, personally. I want to. So it's ironic, of course, because, to paraphrase, Jesus came in his day and said, "Hey guys, this is a bigger message of love than what you're doing with it currently." And so they've, hanged him on a cross. So it's ironic because, I feel like those of us who have come forward and said, wow, this message of love is, it's huge. It breaks all your limitations. It breaks all your belief systems down. And so, but a very similar response happens from the religion of this day. Oh, burn them at the stake, man. That's demons.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And so I've personally experienced that. And it's ironic because I was always like the Christian guy in my family and friend circle. I was an assistant minister for like 20 years at my church. I was like the youngest ever to do it. I was on the church council. I taught confirmation class. Wow. I did all the things up through my 20s and early 30s. But when I went through my awakening and I realized, oh my gosh, this is way bigger than what I thought. And God's love is way, way more perfect and not limited. Way, way bigger. And we are so free and we have absolutely nothing to fear.
Yeah.
It's amazing that when you come out with that message and proclaim it, the result that, I've seen because to me, I'm like, no, but wait, I came from this, and I mean this in good faith. This unconditional love is the good news. This is good news.
When you proclaim it, it is met by the people that ought to be rejoicing in it. That
exactly.
You're met with a stony silence. And,
or worse.
Yes. Or us being stoned.
Yes, or a stone. Yes,
I think it was in the Neil Donald Walsh books, Conversations with God, where God said to him at one stage, "What have you done to all my messengers that I've ever sent? You've stoned them and burned them and crucified them."
Yes.
So what do you think?
I've personally experienced some of that. But he said, you're the real deal. And if you want to do this. And when she heard that and saw that he's a real good Christian man, she knew, she could see the love. So anyway, she made a choice. She's now, there's no holds barred now. And I'm so proud of her because she has bloomed. She's such a powerful being, a powerful, free person. The power that comes with real freedom. Because when you're really free, you're powerful, man.
Yes.
You're so powerful. And so she has that now. She always did. She always did, but now it's like.
And yet that power is gentle.
Yes. Yes. It's gentle. It's powerful. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Not always easy to find the words.
Wow.
Gentlemen, I guess your time is up. Being retired, my time isn't yet up. Not in this sense, anyway.
Not in this sense, yes. all of our time. Yeah, we're all on limited time here.
There's still things for me to do, apparently.
Well, you're not going anywhere yet, Brian.
That's what I've been told.
Yeah,
and I was told
Thank you.
in a medical checkup recently that I have the heart of a young athlete. So that's fairly good, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
I think like to keep longevity going.
Thank
Gentlemen,
you for
bless you.
thank you for holding with you, Brian and Mark, that loving energy that you described. Thank you for being resilient and keeping it. That's important.
Thank you for being a reflector.
Moment by moment.
Sharing and the resonance between us is very powerful. Very powerful.
The resonance between love is so powerful. So where there is love and where there are those who are waking up and knowing themselves as they really are, even in a small degree, there is such beautiful resonance.
20,000
This is what we are.
And we can learn patience by helping our brothers who are a step or two behind us, but who are so entrenched.
I wouldn't even say behind, but I would agree with entrenched. Yeah.
Good. All right.
Well,
Thank you.
Consciousness.
Christian, good luck with your day ahead.
You too, Mark.
Yes.
And Brian, I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, brothers.
Bless you. Namaste.
Namaste.
Until next time.
Have a beautiful day. Farewell, brothers.